when the Pearl Harbor was bombed on the 7th of December 1941, Tack told me this story. He was pounced on by a bunch of whites in Salinas because he's Japanese. His friends came to rescue him, and guess who his friends were? Filipino kids in Salinas. I know the Filipinos in Salinas. I asked them if any of them knew. All they remember is they heard of it, but they didn't participate in it. So at least there was that confirmation that had happened. That's one of the ironies. There's another story about Tack, who's a member of the 442nd Regimental Combat Team, all Japanese, all Nisei. Right? I asked him about what his war stories. He wouldn't say anything, just like most vets. But he did say he had an argument about it with a German officer who owned the Luger. Tack shot him and took the Luger. That's all he would say. And I said, well, what happened after that? Yeah, it was a whole lot of things. But he wouldn't say anything more than that. All right, just another anecdote. All right, let's move.
We like those anecdotes.
One anecdote. This is Bill and Doug's gas station in the 1930s. Before the war, about 1940, because there was a lot of activity here, all those kids used to hang out. So we lived over here, and I'll talk about that later. The Arevelos lived here, so we all congregated because there's a lot of activity here at Bill and Doug's. So one story that I remember when I was a kid, the two pumps are right here. A police car rolls up, gets gas, parks over here. I don't know which one, Bill or Doug, went and talked to the officers. In the meantime, from back of where the equipment bay is, they rolled out a jack. And they put the jack underneath the differential of the car and slowly jack it up. The police officers get a call, they roar off, but they don't go anywhere because the wheels are spinning. The officer jumps out, he was going to shoot the jack. And he says, I could put a bullet through your jack. And we were all laughing at him, and they roar off. And I don't know why that stuck with me as one of those memories. And that's when Bill and Doug's, now Roy Station. That's one of the anecdotes. Anybody has one?
There is one thing. When we were kids, they used to have a hose that if the cars ran over it, it would ring. But we would get our bikes and roll over it, and Bill would say, you kids get out of here. So back and forth, it was a fun time for us.
If you've ever done it, it's great. You jump up and down on the cord, and it rings, and then run. Okay.
Oh, I have another anecdote. So, like, when this was a gas station, they distributed the most traded commodity on the planet, and the second most traded commodity on the planet is coffee, and that's what they do now.
Another kind of fuel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. One of the houses that we lived in was at 639 North 5th Street.
Robert, what's the address again?
639 North 5th Street. Look at the address.
Yeah.
Okay, there was a wooden fence in front, 2 olive trees, and a wooden house in the back where this building is standing now. My family, I think, located in the 30s in this house. Just at that time in 38, 37, the Buddhist church was being built. And I remember distinctly there was a lot of activity because of all the construction. And it was great to run around in there until we get chased out by all the workers. But the great thing was, when it was finished, it was beautiful. Because it was beautiful, all these kids used to love to tour and run around and play in the garden and the areas and run along the veranda until the priest chased us out.
Is this still the original construction or parts of it?
Pardon?
Is that still the original construction?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is the original building.
So that replaced, right next to it was a 2-story wooden building. That was the original church, and that was built to replace it. The original building was built in around 1905, 1906.
Kurt,
Wow.
I think the original building
Is where the
was
gym
was
is?
where the gym is, because that little
Oh,
pine tree
the
was
pine
in front
tree.
of the original building.
You're right.
About that same location, and this pine tree is just been planted to replace the original one that died maybe a couple of years
You're
ago.
right. So that's where it was, a two-story.
Okay, go ahead. Well, they're talking about the what used to be the old Japanese gym. It was a corrugated building, right? You see this modern building now. And it was a dilapidated corrugated building in the 30s and 40s. And they used to show Japanese samurai movies there in the late 40s. And us kids, of course, thought that was great. Well, we couldn't get in, except for our friend, one of the Dobashi boys. I don't know which one it was. He would sneak us in the back of the building, and we sit in the front and watch the samurai movies. If you've ever seen an old Japanese samurai movie, it's hard to take without laughing. So us kids are laughing in the front. The Dobashi kid would be trying to translate for us. And then finally the ushers came in and threw us out. But that was another one of those experiences that sits with me. And I don't even remember who it was that I was with, but I remember it was one of the Dobashi boys, and I see him in my mind, but I don't know his name.
I don't
You
know.
know,
I don't know.
you know all the Dobashi.
Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, go.
Go ahead. I want to talk about this.
Go ahead.
Okay, this I have to say was a time for me which was a sad time as a little girl. During the war, I had a lot of Japanese girlfriends, a lot of kids who we used to play with. And what happened is in the middle of the night, this is all I remember, the buses came and took a lot of them away. And the next morning, this was a sad time for all of us kids because we grew up with a lot of the Japanese kids and all of a sudden they're gone. And so this area reminds me of it. It's a sad time because we lost a lot of our friends. They came back after a while, but still they were gone that time. It was a hard time. So this is what 639 reminds me of when I think about it. But anyway.
Yeah, that's good you remember.
Yes.
Let me give you another story. Because we went to Jefferson Elementary, which is over here on First Street in Hobson. We would walk here down up to Jackson to First Street to the school. On Monday, the 8th of December, 1941, my friend Ed Kimura and I, Ed Kimura lived on 3rd Street. Dr. Kimura's right? Is that right? Third?
No, the same last name, but different.
No, okay. So we, we always did, I would walk over, Ed would meet me, and we would go to school. And then we would both walk back. On Monday, the 7th of December, the 8th of December, we went to the playground, and guess what happened? All those kids jumped on Ed. And before I knew it, they were pushing on him, and he was crying, and I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what was going on. We had no idea. And of course, a few weeks later, or a couple months later, they all disappeared. But that was a real sad story. And that one sticks in my head too. Very sad.
Because we saw, you guys are, what is unique about this whole thing is this generation, our generation, you guys get to hear that because we went through the hard times, depression time, the war times, and we lost so many of our good, dear friends. So it's just something that you guys have a privilege of hearing. I think that's awesome. Share that with your
Okay.
And to ask
All
their
right.
families
One more.
what happened.
Right. We're on the way.
Excuse me, Elaine.
Is this building? That's Juan Calleau's Presbyterian, Filipino Presbyterian Church. On the next page, you'll see a group with a photograph like this. We're standing here, and the photographer is standing here. And in the background of the picture is Aquino's trucking yard. Yes, I remember that. Yeah. You remember. This is a picture you showed there. It's about the early 1940s that we could estimate. And also, you can see myself, my brother Rudy, my sister Elaine, my brother Reuben, who has passed away, and my older sister Helen. And then you can see the Quibelan girls, Rudy's sisters. And that was our Sunday school in 1940. Okay, any questions?
So the Ficino Trucking Company was there till 76 or so when Fuji Towers was built. So when Mom and I and my sister used to walk to Holy Cross Church, I remember walking by here, getting barked by the dog,
Yes.
and that was just the way it was. Walking.
Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to go walk across here to the opposite side on 6th and David. This parking lot is the site of our other house where the Ragsacs live. It used to be a gigantic field where the Happy House is now. And I think they also had a big billboard on it. I'll show you how things have changed since then.
Robert, so your house would be in the parking lot or? And was their house
The
on the
parking
corner
lot,
then?
then there was a lot where the building is now.
So maybe when after your family moved out, my sister's friend moved in. She went to school with, but her house was here.
Okay.
Yeah, my sister's class of 66.
Okay. In case anybody knows tomorrow evening, one of my younger children.
Yeah.
No. That's a brother. I'm sorry, Rick. Okay. Do you have any questions? Yes. No. No, it's a private.
Pardon me? A lot. Mom and Dad actually when Mom and Dad first moved in, they were going to St. Joseph. And then they started, we heard of Holy Cross, let's go try over there.
Okay, we're on the way.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Like a mirror.
So we do it like this.
Okay, this is the site of Ideal Laundry, which was built by Mr. Surakawa-san. This is only one of two benches that talks about the location of the presence of the Filipinos in Japantown, or what was then called Chinatown. By the way, Japantown is a modern term. In the 30s and 40s, everything was called Chinatown, including what is now the businesses in Jackson and 4th Street. This building, built in 1929, owned by Mr. Surakawa-san, employed a Filipino named Ben Robert Ragsac, my uncle. And then on the next page, you can see Uncle Ben standing in front, right over here. This picture taken in about the 1930s. Uncle Ben, let's see, 1929. Guess what happened in 1929? The Depression. So Surakawa-san had a very tough time with his business. So he decided and offered it to my Uncle Ben, and he bought it. And this original building, I remember, was really creepy because upstairs was old stuff. It was used over the years since the 1920s. And I think it was used even as, I think it was also
Oh, did you know
Yeah.
this was a Chinese
Yeah,
courthouse
right.
too?
Yeah, it was a Chinese courthouse. And yeah, what was it?
And there was a Filipino restaurant upstairs. Max Peralta used to run it.
Max Peralta was one of the leading Filipinos leaders of the community.
Maybe we're thinking of Ken Ying Lo building.
Oh, okay, and when my uncle took over the laundry, he operated it for a while. This building was too big, so he moved it down to 611, and we'll go down in that direction. Okay, well, let's see, let me get to, take a look at this picture here. That's page 10. That's the Chinese temple of five gods, Vanishing, located at the corner. And us kids, at the time, we lived at 753, which is half a block up this way. Because the Chinese temple was a great, sort of like a attraction, again as a playground, we used to try to get into the temple until it changed again. We were chased out by the old Chinese guys. Then you can see that what it was like when it was active, and then the city of San Jose, in their wisdom, demolished a historical landmark. And I'm not going to say anything prejudicial, but in the 1940s, it was destroyed in 1948. Right?
49.
49?
Yeah.
So it was destroyed in 1949. And the city council decided it was a hazard to a firehouse built right next to it, a fire station, as if the fire station couldn't take care of themselves, right? So they decided to demolish this historic church, which we all knew. And by the way, in this area between 6th and 7th was a Chinese town, Chinatown called Heinleinville. And there's another story about Heinleinville, and I don't think I have time to go into that. That's a big one. But because in the 1920s it was an active Chinatown, where would the Filipinos shop for their goods? Right. And I remember distinctly going down Cleveland Avenue with my mom, which is between 6th and 7th Street, and looking at the groceries that she wanted to buy. And I was holding it in hand because I was scared of all these Chinese guys with their black outfits and the long QE. You know what the QE? The long braided hair and their black hats. And I remember another one of those things that sticks in my head. Okay, any questions about the laundry and Heinleinville? Look up Heinleinville. There's a good story about that. Because if it wasn't for Heinleinville, I don't think Pinoytown would exist. If there was no Heinleinville, where would the Pinoy shop? For their Asian goods. Okay.
There might not be
There might not be a Japantown too, come to think of it. So we owe a whole lot to not only to Mr. Heinlein, but to all of those Chinese that were settled there and created and started their business. And if you want to know more about that, look up Connie Young Yu's book on Chinatown, San Jose's Chinatown.
One thing,
One
you
thing.
have to visualize where it's all gated. This was all red brick buildings, all brick buildings. The reason I know that is my little brother and I would run up a veranda of the Chinese community there, and all you could hear is probably the clicking of mahjong and women
Oh yeah.
laughing because it was
There's a-
probably a
Brothel?
yeah, whatever.
No.
We tried to
No.
be, but they
Entertainment
had
center.
everything covered, but all you could hear is the laughing of women and mahjong. But the thing is, it was such a community there for the Chinese. It was just something we remembered as kids going in and out of Chinatown.
Oh,
And that's why we know it as Chinatown.
yeah. I just have to say that Heinlein is a very unusual name, and in the wider society, its most famous member is a science fiction author that did a lot to build up the space program.
Well, Heinlein is a German immigrant who
Yeah.
just happened to own the properties there, and he offered it to the Chinese whose original Chinatown in downtown San Jose mysteriously burned. It wasn't arson. No, it couldn't have been arson. Just like demolishing the temple. The city council, you know, well, maybe I've been they were all white. Okay.
Yeah. You were here 75 years?
75
I
years.
grew up right next to this church. Remember a guy named Pinky?
Pinky. I think so, yeah.
That's him.
Is it a Filipino guy?
Yeah, it's me.
Gambling or gambling?
Well, I said we get to that. Yeah. I know, right?
He did. All of them, they did.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
Remember there was a black guy, Shelby, and Edgar?
Given? Oh, Given, Sheva Given, Edgar Given?
Yeah.
They did. No, I think, wait a minute. Ed is dead. But I think Shelby might be still living.
Then used to
No,
be
wait a
the
minute, I think
Wilkins-
Shelby died.
Then the Wilkins family used to live right in the building right there.
Yeah. That's it.
I grew
You know,
up
we
right
started
over
here in a little storefront. And we've been here 75 years. Been
Remember,
established.
it's a little church.
Pastor and the brothers built this with their own hands.
Brother, Reverend Matthews. He was
Now you got it. You know it. You know him.
Yeah, that was
I've been
70
here
years.
55 years.
And then Walter Van used to live there.
Yeah.
I went to school with him.
Who?
Walter Van.
Alexandria.
We went to high school together.
Oh, it was
and he
Be-
was Porter
It
Vice.
was Bessie Alexandra.
Yeah.
Yeah, she used to play a mean piano.
Yeah.
Yes.
Alexander, the Alexanders, you probably know. What the name you'd call?
We called her, well, Bessie was Bessie Alexandra.
Yeah. And you had Resi Alexander, and you had Henry Alexander. Well, let me out. Yeah, they always here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I know, I've been around here a long time. Been around here 55 years, I've been here right here.
That's a good one.
Coming through, everyone. Yes, identical to your picture.
I forgot to mention about the Ningsingjung Temple. When it was demolished, they took out a lot of the interior decorations and stored them until they created that replica at the historic San Jose History Park. And the temple is almost an exact duplicate. In fact, the very first time that I went to that duplicate, I walked in and my hair stood in the back of my head because I was transformed 60 years to my childhood. Immediately, I saw everything that looked exactly like I remember in the actual building. So if you want to see what it looked like, for sure, then go to History Park, San Jose, and you can see the restoration. Done very, very well. Obviously, this is the Filipino Community Center, established in 1933. I thought I would time it so that we could get in, but they are just finishing their Filipino services, church services, so we don't want to disturb them. But this was established in 1933. If the building, the property was owned by Tony Virtudis, and he, in cooperation with the founders of the church, of the community, purchased the land and erected the building. This is not the actual building. This is the actual building, but highly modified. In those days, it was just the narrow part of the building. I don't think it had any of these properties here. There were two buildings here, and Pinky could talk about those. And when we get them there, then we could talk about the Filipino-owned businesses that were across the street, which I can see very clearly. Again, that's another one of those things that sticks in your memory as a child. And by the way, it's hard. I say the same thing to the Filipinos of our age who grew up in El Dorado Street, Stockton, or Temple Street, Los Angeles. It's hard for any of us now, any of you, to conceive that on both sides of the street, there are all these Filipinos, mostly Ilocano, on a Saturday, Friday night, in their fine suits, when they would come off the field and they would congregate and meet their friends here, at the gambling house, pool halls, and other places of pleasure. Oh, Elaine.
And also, Robert used to shine shoes for all the Filipinos. They made their shoe shine box with the strap was a leather belt strap. But they used to go shine shoes up and down here because the Filipinos then dressed up really sharp in their suits after working in the fields. So this was something, their outlet was to come here to Chinatown. And so the boys would make sure they had shiny shoes. Robert, Rudy.
15 cents. And if you did a good job, 2 bits. Anybody know what 2 bits is?
Quarter.
25 cents.
That's right.
My dad
Oh,
taught
you
me.
would know.
Yeah, my dad taught me.
Right. That was, and it was so neat because we would walk, my brother and I would walk down here, and the boys would say, boys, Uncle, Uncle, Manong, you know. By the way, we never knew their names. Why is that?
Everybody was uncle.
Everybody was boy.
Uncle.
Because if you knew the way the Filipino respect is, the older ones are dressed as uncle or Manong, right? We don't know what their names are. And that, to this day, that's a sad part because when we see the pictures, I know his face, but I don't know his name. Name's Uncle. Okay, so that was my brother and I's first entrepreneurship effort. And it was really neat because the Filipinos of that era dressed up really sharp in their Macintosh suits and their floor shine shoes. And those shoes, we used to shine them really good. And if it was a great job, 2 bits. 2 bits. Okay. All right. Now, Pinky can take over and you can talk about what happened here.
Okay, this Filipino, it was a wooden building. And Filipinos lived upstairs. There was boxes size and things. And then this is where they used to have their meetings, the Filipino community and some other clubs. And now come to the gambling. This little door, there would be a Filipino guy right here. And there'd be a peephole. Make sure no cops come. Then the Filipinos come, they stand there, and then they know, okay, they open the door. They used to go in the back. They used to go here, and then this is where all the gambling used to be, right here, in this building. But where did they have the cockfights? And the gambling was there. They used to gamble too sometimes in here, fake cards. But the big time was in this building here. But they had to go to the community. So that way, if cops come by, they think they're going into a thing. And, man, I tell you, I can tell more things. But that was for the Filipinos, Chinese, everybody used to gather in this place at night. The Chinese would come about 7 o'clock at night, and they used to open the community and they used to go there. My friend and I used to climb the roof and watch them gamble. We call them the real gambling, not just cards. And then I think so. Okay, and
I'm asking you to talk a little louder so that we can all hear.
like I said, this used to grow the Filipinos and Chinese, this big gambling. Like I said, this used to be a door with the peephole. And then right here used to be a long bench. And all the Filipino guys, they used to just sit there and shoot the pool, just talk about a lot of things. And on the weekends, they used to bring their families here. I used to know the Filipino kids, and we used to just play the kids game. We used to play around here, and the Filipinos would, talk and it was a get together.
What happened? Why is it not like that? Do we know why it's not like that anymore?
Well, it's not run by the Chinese people.
Okay.
So
because it was ran by the Chinese?
I'll give you a secret why they used to get away with it. But you know how you pay off, and Chief of Police, Mr. Ray Blackmore, was good friends with the owner of the King No restaurant. And yeah, I used to, when I used to work at the restaurant there, the chief of police and his family used to go every Thursday. They had dinner there, you know, the family. Then I used to wonder how come they don't have to pay, you know. And so I asked the waitress, I said, how come and they got the best food, not the one you see in the menu. I mean, they really had the good, real McCoy Chinese food. You know, and all the things used to be, you know, food, you know, with curtains. And man, gosh, I said, how come they don't serve that? You know, it's good. And then later on, when the waitress told me what was going on, I was, you know, so, and then they used to sell firecrackers, and then on Chinese New Year, they used to celebrate upstairs. And then, you know, with the long firecrackers, yeah, the Nixon building, which is a church now, I think. But that's where they used to, the Chinese and all the politicians, Ray Blackwell, and they used to party up there, and then they used to get the firecrackers, you know, like Chinese New Year, and blow them all up, and
Roman candles.
yeah. And that's where they used to, the Chinese used to celebrate the New Year's there. And then when Chinese got, well, next door used to be a little Chinese store right next door where they made noodles and bean sprouts, but they left that building now. And the Chinese that used to work there, there was kind of a boarding room upstairs for the men that old building being tore down. And then one morning, the Chinese guy knew he didn't come to work. And then they found him, he hung himself. Right, yeah, right in there, upstairs. His name was Lee. But unfortunately, he, you know, they were a little messed up on those things, you know. But it was shocking because he had a family, and then they're wondering how come he didn't come to work. They went upstairs, and man, you know, the door, he hit himself in. So that's, you know, a little scary.